waiting for. All right, Rosie, you started the recorder.
It is after 10, but Jesse will be late, so I think we're just waiting on Geronimo and Dan.
All right, it's a couple minutes after, so I think we'll go ahead and start. So I hereby call this meeting to order. Rosie, could you give us the roll call?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Chair McCarthy,
I am here.
Patrice Horseman,
Here, present.
Geronimo Vasquez, not present. Austin Aslan,
I'm here.
and Dan Acoli, Regina Salas.
I'm fully present here.
Thank you. Jesse Thompson has notified us that he will be late today, but he will be attending later in the meeting. Jeff, and then we have Metro Plan staff, Jeff,
I am here.
Dave,
Good morning, I'm here.
and myself, Rosie. And then we have others in attendance, and I see Geronimo is arriving. So we have guests present. I'm going to read them off and then ask that anyone, if I missed anyone, to let me know. I see we have Ed Stillings, Cheryl Barlow, Tom Smith, Jason James, Brandon Kavanaugh, our legal counsel, Shane Dillies, and Greg Clifton. Did I miss anyone?
Hello, this is Geronimo Vasquez. I'm not sure if I was called or not.
We have you down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes.
So Rosie, in the
Thank you.
middle of my screen, I have a big thing. It says this meeting is being recorded. Can we
Yeah.
get that off the screen?
I think you have to accept, yes.
Do I need to do something?
I think you just have to acknowledge it. Everyone should get that notice, so you have the option to leave the meeting if you don't want to be recorded. I think it's a new Zoom
Oh,
feature.
okay. So we just hit continue and move on. Okay, I'll just make a couple quick announcements before we get started. I'll just note that a new agenda was sent out yesterday. It updated the page numbers and a couple other very minor tweaks, but I just thought I'd mention that. We have a new member, Dan Acoli, but he's not here yet. I wanted to welcome him in, but maybe we can do that at the end of the meeting.
He
So,
is joining us. Sorry to interrupt you. He's here now.
Bill, he's here. Dan, you're here, Dan? I can't hear you, but anyway. So assuming you're here, I just want to welcome you to the Metro Plan Board. You and I worked together at Mountain Line, and I'm very happy to see you on board the ship.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board and everyone, thank you for your patience with this technology we have been dealing with for a year. It looks like Dr. Acoli is still connecting to audio. So he's trying to get in the room and he just hasn't been able to yet.
Okay. Rosie, do we have any public comment today? You're on mute.
Mr. Chair, no, there has been no public comment shared with me before the meeting.
All right, thank you. So we're down to item 1D, which is the approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any comments before we get a motion to approve the minutes from the May 5th meeting? Incidentally, I don't have chat open. On the city, we use Teams, and I always use my chat function, but so if somebody needs to say something, I guess we're a small group, we'll just, interrupt, and we'll all be fair, play fair. So I don't see or hear any comments on the minutes. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes for May 5th, please?
So move that we approve the minutes of May 5th, 2021.
Patrice Horstman, motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
Regina Salas was the second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye to approve the minutes. I say aye.
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 And do we have any nays? All right, so that motion passes without dissent. The next item is item 2, which is consent items. I just real quickly make a couple comments. This is about Mr. Melbeck's contract. At the last meeting, we decided that at today's meeting, we would review and possibly address Mr. Melbeck's salary level. In discussions with Mr. Melbeck, he and I thought that it was actually his idea that we could just put this off for a year and do that next year, but there's no need to address it now. And I sent an email to the board and no one commented. So I think that stands. The other issue is that we do have a new contract that hopefully we'll approve here in a minute. And it does a couple things. It takes the disability insurance out of the contract because, well, the main issue here is the HR for MetroPlan is handled by Mountain Line, and they don't have that type of disability insurance. So we dropped that from the contract, and then we rearranged his time off. We had things like, I forget what it was called, but we restructured how it is structured, but the number of days off that Mr. Melbeck is entitled to is not changed even in the slightest. It's exactly the same as it was. So does anyone have any questions about that? We did send a red line out and a clean copy of the new contract.
If I may, Chair, it just,
Please.
the comments that were made and the changes that were made were to be consistent with Mountain Line's policies, but also the new Arizona state minimum wage law, which also includes certain requirements with regards to sick leave. So, and MetroPlan's legal counsel has reviewed the language and has approved the language.
That is true, and thank you for that added info. So can I get a motion to approve agenda item 2A, which is the executive director's new contract?
I move we approve the new contract for Jeff Melbeck, our executive director.
Thank you, Ms. Horstman. Can I get a second? I'll second it. All right, so we have a motion. We've had discussion. All those in favor of signing the new contract, approving the new contract, please say aye.
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 And do we have any nays?
Yeah.
All right, that motion passes without dissent. Thank you so much. Before we move to the next item, I see that Dan Okoli is on the screen, and I just want to welcome you. I don't know if you heard, I said a few words a few minutes ago, but you and I worked together on the Mountain Line board, and we always enjoyed that. Really appreciate your added help.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard the ship.
Thank you. I'm glad to be. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thank you. The next item is 3A, which is budget adoption. Mr. Melbeck is going to make some comments on this item.
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an item that we discussed last month, and I'm recommending that the board adopt the fiscal year 22 budget for MetroPlan of $1,861,893.52. And a couple related strategic work plan items. One is one of our guiding principles of MetroPlan, building trust and credibility. and clearly having a very transparent and open budget process as part of that effort. And then the board adopted, again, just last month, one of the strategic work plan goals of evaluating the current staff capacity and determine the need for additional staff to achieve the strategic goals that have been assigned to staff. And just by way of some brief background, and it's up on your screen, adopting the annual budget and a 5-year financial plan just provides that level of fiscal responsibility and forethought that will allow us to continue to thrive in a hopefully predictable way. And when we look at the expenses and project trends, we're better able to plan for the future and correct things from that might have happened last year, take advantage of opportunities, and make sure we're aligning with our organizational goals. And before I ask you to adopt the 22 budget, I just want to share some information on the 21 budget and point out that the overall administrative budget that includes salary and operations and travel, that was just over $500,000, the budget, and actual expenses are under that by about 2.5%, $13,000 overall. And although overall we were just under budget, I do want to point out salary and benefits were under budget by about $20,000 or 5%. When we look at operations, though, we were over budget, and we budgeted $64,000. And I'm not going to say the dollars and cents here. I'm just going to keep the numbers at the $1,000 level. And now we're projected to spend $80,000. So it's about 25% over budget. And I just want to point out the main reasons for that: payroll processing fees, telephone and internet service, a new laptop, computer, liability insurance. We created a new Metro Plan video, which I shared at the last advance. Just didn't anticipate all these things. For comparison's sake, we spent $127,000 in fiscal year 2020 because we were between independence and being supported by the city. So I want to point out, I just think this is a curious thing. When we were separating from the city and becoming independent, Councilmember McCarthy asked me if it would cost more to operate the organization. And I said, I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't, but it might be as much as $20,000 over. And this year it was $15,900. So we will continue to manage those costs. And travel is under because COVID, we haven't traveled. So overall, we're definitely tracking in the administrative budget. We've just got some fine tuning on some of the categories. In terms of capital projects, we are on track with some of our projects, data management and the mini grant that we put out, passing funding through to Mountain Line. However, we're significantly behind schedule on some of our other major projects. For example, the regional transportation plan, and this is later in your agenda today. We're hoping you'll approve a contract and a notice to proceed. That was delayed because we formed an advisory group and we've gone through a long process in getting momentum behind this and refining the scope of work. And then the Milton Railroad Underpass was a project, and we've really been kind of waiting for our opportunity to jump in and help as the various projects in that corridor came into alignment. And so I will give you I'll show some graphs in a minute of how the trends are with budget versus expense. But right now, you know what, I'm going to jump down to that before I go to fiscal year 22. And I know that lots of people are visual learners. So you can see, I believe, chart 1 in the upper left corner, and salary ops and travel is just under budget. And then capital, as you can see, is significantly under budget for the reasons just shared. Yes.
My screen is showing the word Rosie Ware. It doesn't show anything, no charts. Are you trying to show charts now?
Actually, I see charts just fine, Jim.
Yeah, I see the charts. Pie charts and bar charts.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder why I'm not seeing them. Okay.
Maybe you aren't a visual learner, Jim.
Do you want me to
Figure
pause?
out this computer.
Do you want me to pause while you reconfigure?
No, you keep going.
Okay. So there's the report on fiscal year 21. I also reported on this last month, but I just wanted to bring it back to keep you looped in. Then let's move on to fiscal year 22, because this is the action I'm looking for today. And the big change is I'm recommending we create an entry-level transportation planner position. Full costs, salary and benefits will be about $84,000 a year. And the point is to assign a significant support role on 5 of the 20 projects that Metro Plan Strategic Work Plan sets out for us. And the other benefits are that the position would provide backup and receive training from the transportation planning manager. David Wessel has an immense amount of experience, can do really high-level planning work, is well respected at the state and national level. So being able to bring somebody on who can, be mentored by Dave is, I think, just a really great opportunity for that individual and for, the health of this organization. And it is a very small staff that we have. So we would have at least the beginnings of a succession plan. I think at a TAC meeting, Dave said, it's a very short ladder at Metro Plan. And I think I said, well, it's actually more like a stool. There's really not a very long series of steps in our organization. So I'm recommending that we hire an entry-level planner based on a few things, because we discussed this with the board last month. We discussed it with the management committee. We discussed it with the technical advisory committee, and it's really been through the whole process. And last month, Dave presented a PowerPoint presentation laying out the pros and cons of contracting out service versus bringing it in-house. And there's not necessarily a right way to do it. It's just what's right for us today. And Mr. Chair and members of the board, I want to say, if people want to see that presentation again, Dave can do it. And if you would just want to keep moving, we don't have to take you through that again. The second point is the management committee was very supportive of us doing this. So that's the city manager, county manager, NAPTA, CEO. And when I presented this to the board last month, I heard a lot of support, value for the staff position, that whole institutional memory aspect and developing a more robust culture, and recognizing that we're growing. We need to have capacity without contracting all of our work out. And finally, the TAC, as I mentioned, did support it. So the budget apportions funds to accomplish all of the capital projects in our adopted strategic work plan. And then, as well as other things that we can do. So the fiscal impact is that this budget has capacity, to do everything we are setting out to do. And it provides a 5-year plan that demonstrates that we are, and I'm going to go to that in a minute, that we are solvent through fiscal year 2026. I do want to point out, and it should be noted, that the amount of funding for capital projects, and I'm going deep on this like I did on the expenses in fiscal year 21, just to be really transparent about it, so you can put your finger on an issue if you want to discuss it. The amount of funding for capital projects diminishes to $198,000 by fiscal year 26. And, that trend, it gives us 5 years, but that requires us to bring more work in-house and to pursue more grant funding for projects. But that's what we're doing right now. So that trend is consistent really with our direction. So the alternatives I put out for you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, are to adopt the budget and 5-year plan that includes this position for all the reasons I just discussed. You could also adopt a status quo budget and say, we're not ready to do that yet. So just keep doing what you can in-house, contract out what you need to, just do your best with what you got. It doesn't save us any money, it's spending our money differently. And then you might want to make other adjustments to the budget based on all the information I'm sharing now. And your last alternative is to postpone adopting the budget. And then we could hold a special meeting before July 22nd, and it would give you more time. But we would have to hold a special meeting because we really need to adopt the budget by June 30th. So I'm just going to put the 5-year plan up there so you can see and perhaps refer to this. And in your packet, and if somebody wants me to put up on screen, as the pages go farther down, we go into more detail on line items. But overall, with that, I'd like to turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. I will note that I played around with all my little buttons and I got it, the presentation to come up on my screen. I do have my chat open now if somebody wants to, say they want to comment or question or anything. So I'll go to the board. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Melbeck about the budget?
Yeah, so sorry, just so I can understand it. The 2022 budget is 1.8, million and change. And then in 23, it drops down. Just a high level, what's, if you could sort of explain it, just that significant. It stays roughly in that range, 800,000, so on. Can you?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Dr. Akoli. Really appreciate the question. Because we really underspent our capital and project budget in this past year, we're rolling all those projects into next year and expect to spend them all in fiscal year 22. So there's that big spike as we roll everything forward.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, I don't hear any comments. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. if I
Please.
may. So does the draft FY 2022 budget includes a salary for the new entry-level transportation planning position?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Salas, yes, it does.
And then it's built into the in future years. 26.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Salas, the position is added in fiscal year 22 and then sustained through fiscal year 2026.
With that, Mr. Chair, if there are no questions, I am happy to make a motion.
Please do. Thank you.
Yeah, I move to adopt the FY 21-2022 Metro Plan budget and 5-year plan.
I second.
And I'm presuming that's with option 1, or the first bullet point there.
Hold on. Sorry.
Jeff, could you put that back up on the screen, the three or four options?
Yeah, I do have the recommendation up.
Yeah,
That works.
Yeah,
That's the one.
that was my motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Adopt-
I just wanted to make that absolutely clear.
Yeah.
So Ms. Salas made a motion. Did we get a second?
yes, I second.
Dr.
Sure.
Akoli is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Are there any nays? It sounds like we have a unanimous decision and that budget is approved. Thank you, Mr. Melbeck.
Thank you.
You're up next. You were going to talk about the RTAC. You'll tell us what that is.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm recommending gently that the board consider adopting an alternate to the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC. And I believe Kevin Adam, who runs that group, is going to be joining us pretty soon for this meeting. I want to point out that Council Member Salas is our representative on the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council. And this RTAC is a very important group. They work with the other small MPOs like us around the state and councils of government and like NACOG. And there's 10 of us, small organizations. RTAC works to represent all of us to the state legislature, particularly, so that we have one voice talking in contrast to the big voices that come out of Maricopa County. And I don't know if Kevin is here to hear me say these nice words, but I feel like the organization has really had a stride in the past few years. But enough of that. The point of this is to see if the board wants to appoint an alternate. And RTAC has alternates just like we do. So that if somebody's unable to attend, someone else can go in their stead. And I want to point out again, that Councilmember Salas has been very engaged, has attended every meeting. And an alternate doesn't have to be appointed right now. It would be nice. So I just wanted to, the board asked me to bring this back, and I just wanted to bring it back at your request and say, if this feels like it works for somebody, and if a board member has interest, that would be great. And if the board is not ready to appoint an alternate yet, we can just bring it back when the board is. Mr. Chairman.
So just briefly, can you explain like how much time would be involved? And of course, the alternate wouldn't even need to go unless the primary, Ms. Salas, couldn't make it. And are the meetings in person, or are they tend to be by video?
Councilmember Salas, would you like to respond to that as the current member?
The meetings are monthly, and currently they're all by Zoom. And I understand there's an upcoming some kind of a summit or a retreat in the fall, which will be in person. And if we don't appoint an alternate today, I strongly suggest that we appoint an alternate after the summer break. So we can have the alternate attend the retreat or the summit as well. In terms of time commitment, it's it's the monthly meeting that's about 2 hours, and of course preparing for the meeting and touching base with Mr. Malbach and Mr. Adam before the meeting, if there's anything in particular that we want to advocate on behalf of Metroplan. I am, let me also to take this space and moment just to give kudos and appreciation of Mr. Malbach. He's been very engaged too with the RTAC. In fact, Mr. Malbach is part of the advisory committee of the board, and they have been pursuing a big ask that will be pursued by RTAC, which is between 40 and 50 million. So each of the jurisdiction can have an appropriation from the state, using the collective voice of RTAC. And then I don't want to speak out of turn, Mr. Malbach, but I just want to share with the board that we are in the process of submitting our priority project to the tune of 2.5 million, which will be part of that 50 million ask on behalf of RTAC. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. So I'll ask, are there any board members that would be interested in being the alternate at this point? I'm not hearing anybody, but it may be that people want to think about it. And maybe, as Regina suggested, that we could appoint someone right after the break. And so if anyone is thinking about it, they could maybe talk to Regina or Mr. Malbach or me about what it would be.
Yes, and if Mr. Chair, I also want to mention that Supervisor Ryan is the chair of the RTAC board.
That's great. All right, I'm not hearing anybody speak up, so I guess we'll maybe revisit this after the summer break. All right, the next agenda item is Title VI Plan. Ms. Ware is going to give this presentation. So Rosie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start with a brief overview of the Title VI plan. First of all, we are presenting this a little bit early this year. The plan and the annual accomplishments and goals report are actually due in August each year. And since we don't have a scheduled meeting in July or August, we would like to adopt a preliminary plan and report with a couple noted changes. The Title VI plan is pending changes to the demographic maps. They are a work in progress and should be done by the end of the month. Same goes for the accomplishments report, accomplishments and goals report. That specifically will need slight tweaks after this meeting to document meeting attendance. And other than that, it shouldn't change significantly. So I wanted to note that these are almost final reports, and we wanted your approval so we can submit them on time in August instead of submitting them late in September after the next board meeting. So with that, what we like to do with the Title VI plan adoption each year is to do a brief training for the board to give you an overview of the Title VI and what our obligations and responsibilities are. And with that, I will start a brief presentation. Give me just a moment to get that started. Okay, so you should see a PowerPoint SY22 Title VI plan. Is that correct?
We do see it.
Thank you. So why Title VI? Title VI is a requirement of our federal funding. Title VI is a portion of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act prohibits discrimination on the grounds of race, color, or national origin in any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. In 1994, a Clinton executive order, or President Clinton executive order expanded this to include specifically environmental justice for minority and low-income populations, to include seniors and disabled people. And this relates to our transportation projects, specifically because these projects do have an environmental impact on these populations specifically at times. As you know, these are our Metro Plan boundaries, the greater Flagstaff area, including the outskirts, Belmont, Kachina, Stony Park area. Our annual goals and strategies. First and foremost, we are committed to preventing discrimination and to fostering a just and equitable society. Metro Plan strives to make transportation decisions that meet the needs of all people. We enhance the public involvement process to reach all segments of the population and ensure all groups have a voice in the transportation planning process, regardless of race, color, national origin, gender, age, disability, and income status. We provide the community with opportunities to learn about and improve the quality and usefulness of transportation in their lives. We improve data collection, monitoring, analysis tools that assess the needs of and analyze the potential impacts of transportation plans and programs on the Title VI protected population. We avoid disproportionately high and adverse impacts on Title VI protected populations. And finally, we comply with the requirements of Title VI and all accompanying rules and orders. Some ways we accomplish these goals are by making sure that our vendor contracts utilize ADOT's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. We make sure that both Executive Board and Technical Advisory Committee meetings are open to the public, even when they are remote only. We provide full transparency on our website, including a prominent display of the Title VI notice to the public. A full agenda packet is available at least 24 hours before the meeting, if not more, and meeting dates are always posted ahead of time. Finally, the Title VI annual plan and accomplishment reports are available on the website upon adoption. Next, this is an update of our Metro Plan population. Some items to note that, for example, our senior population is about 11.9% of our regional area. Our Hispanic population is about 12.5%. We have about 14% living below poverty and 12.5% living with a disability. Finally, our LEP, or Limited English Proficiency population, is about 3.9%. And this triggers some other requirements for us to make sure that we're accommodating those populations as well. We do that by providing interpretation and translation services upon request. And if a member of the public ever requests either service of any board member or anyone else, please reach out to any MetroPlan staff, specifically myself, and we would be happy to arrange for services to help them access our services in their language, specifically Spanish. I don't know if I noted that our LEP population is primarily Spanish speaking, although we do have other language, first languages. Finally, complaint procedures. Any person who believes that he or she individually or as a member of any specific class of people or in connection with any minority contractor has been subjected to discrimination under Title VI may file a complaint. The basis of the complaint must be unequal treatment because of race, color, national origin, disability, or limited English proficiency, or other non-compliance with Title VI rules or guidelines adopted. One thing that's new this year is the complaint form is now available on our website. That being said, I will note that as far as I know, MetroPlan has never received a Title VI complaint or ADA complaint, and neither have our partner agencies, the City of Flagstaff, Coconino County, and that's that. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Well, thank you, Ms. Ware. Do we have any questions from the board? I'm not seeing any or hearing any.
So what you're asking is to approve the annual report, which you just presented, I'm assuming, is that correct?
The annual report and the fiscal year 22 plan. Yes,
Very good.
that is
All right,
correct.
very
Thank
good.
you.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, Chair McCarthy, I mean, June is Pride Month and we're here to celebrate diversion, inclusion, and equality. So it seems like an appropriate time to enter this motion to approve the Title VI plan and accomplishment report as presented.
That is great. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Yes, I second.
Dr. Acoli seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Do we have any no votes? Not hearing any, that motion passes unanimously. All right, I'm going to take the chair's liberty and go back to item 3B, which is the Regional Transportation Advocacy Council alternate. And Mr. Vasquez, did you have a comment on this?
Yes, if necessary, I'd be willing to be the alternate if there's no other volunteers.
That would be great. And I think it's really good that we have one person from the city, one person from the county.
Mhm.
So could I get a motion to nominate Mr. Vasquez as our alternate to the RTAC?
I would move that we appoint Geronimo Vasquez as the alternate.
Thank you, Ms. Horstman. Can I get a second?
I'd gladly second that, Mr. Chair.
And I love the smile on your face. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I don't know if I can vote on my own
Opposed?
appointment.
Do we have any opposed? No. That passes without dissent. Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. I really appreciate that. That'll be one last agenda item for our September meeting. All right. Let's go down to item 3D, which is the Transportation Improvement Program Amendment. And Mr. Wessel is going to talk us through this. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, David Wessel, Planning Manager. We're looking for a motion from you today to amend the TIP to address several grant opportunities. The Downtown Mile Raise Grant, the Loan Tree Authorization Request, Technology Deployment Grant, and the Mountain Line Support Vehicles. We'll look to place these in the illustrative year, which is fiscal year 25. Part of our strategic work plan is to pursue an additional $2 million in additional resources. To do that, we are applying for several grants or working with partners in their efforts. And so we are looking for a RAISE grant. It says here on the first bullet, $1 million. That'll be probably $2.5 or $3 million. It's really coordinating a very large series of projects, including the Rio to Flag, Lone Tree Overpass, and more. And to do that, it's a fairly large lift, so it'll probably ultimately be $2.5 to $3 million. We're also worked with the city to submit the Lone Tree authorization, and that was successfully submitted by Congressman O'Halloran. That was an $8 million request. And then working, as you'll hear later, on the technology deployment grant, which is a 50% match, $3 million effort. And then Mountain Line is seeking $300,000 in support vehicles. We need to place these in the Transportation Improvement Program so that they are eligible to be authorized. Should we be successful in one or more of these awards, we'll take additional action to move it into the appropriate fiscal year. We had this discussion with the TAC and the Management Committee, and they're all supportive of this effort. So again, we're looking for a motion to amend the TIP to place these 4 grants in the illustrative year, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Do we have any questions, board members? Not seeing any.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Ms. Salas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Wessel, for your presentation. Can you please refresh my memory about the Downtown Mile Race grant and what project does it involve?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Salas. This is a planning grant to help us coordinate, us being virtually every single partner we have here, to coordinate the Rio to Flag project, the Downtown Connection Center, the Lone Tree Overpass, and really coordinate these with BNSF. It includes the Milton Railroad Bridge, because to satisfy BNSF's needs, there's probably changes to the trackage that would affect that bridge. To accommodate, again, BNSF, there's probably needs for trackage that might extend as far back as Nestle Purina. So understanding all of these implications and how they relate to each other is fairly complex. And so a significant grant is needed to really pull all the partners together, all of their plans and engineering, and then set us up perhaps for additional funding if we find significant gaps.
Any other comments? Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat that that certain people like the city manager are saying thank you for the support of MetroPlan. Could I get a motion to amend the TIP as presented, or any other motion?
I'll be happy to, per the recommendations, amend the TIP as presented. Obviously, these are extremely important grant projects, and we want to make sure that we are in line to be able to proceed with these grant projects. So I would move to amend as recommended.
Thank you, Ms. Horstman. Do we have a second? Well, I will go ahead and second it then. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 I'm an aye. Any opposed? That motion passes without dissent. Thank you so much, Executive Board. The next item is 3E. Mr. Wetzel is going to present again, and this involves the project prioritization matrix.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This really looking for the board to review and reaffirm this matrix, which is the one that we used previously. This is a direct action in our strategic work plan. And Jeff, I think I'm going to ask you just to scroll right down to the matrix. I think it's the easiest way to consider this. Thank you. So the idea here is really to identify the role for MetroPlan to play in the development or delivery of the many projects being pursued or under consideration by ourselves, as well as, or as importantly, our member agencies. So what we have done in the past, we put together this matrix, which looked to assess the regional importance of these projects, the need that they were facing, and the role of MetroPlan. For regional importance, we looked at, are they urgent? Are these projects that have an immediate or very short-term need? Are they of a magnitude that rises to kind of this regional significance, or if they're not regional, just a large localized need? Multimodalism is a big part of what we're about. So do they address more than one mode? And do they have a regional impact? Are they affecting more than one agency? And so we've asked our members to put together lists of projects and to rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. Similarly, we asked them to do that for the action need. Is we're a planning organization. Is there a plan that's needed to really cement this or solidify the scope of a project? Or is there funding needed where there's currently no funding available, or there's perhaps an opportunity out there? And as far as defining MetroPlan involvement, we are a regional organization bringing multiple members to the table. So projects that have a multi-agency blend to them are more relevant to MetroPlan involvement. Or if there's a staff need, we do have some expertise and capacity. And if we can fill a gap where perhaps a member agency does not have the staff resource at the time, we are routinely pursue funds and work with our agencies to pursue funds. So if there's a known funding opportunity out there that we can be of assistance for or in. And then finally, this long-term need. Again, we're a planning organization, tend to look down the road. And so if this project is something that's a little further out, and so warrants some more long-term planning, again, that fits our role. So what we're looking for today is an endorsement of this process. And with that, we'll begin the process and come back to you in October with a finalized list. And so what we'll do to start that process is go back out to the member agencies and their technical staffs, ask them if there's additional projects. You saw in the strategic work plan the reference to, as many as 3 pedestrian crossings. So we'll try to get those incorporated and updated. We'll also report out on the status of this project. And what you see here are the top 20 or so. There was, I think, a total of 80 projects on this list. And one of the benefits of this, as reported by the TAC, was it really helps everybody to see kind of the universe of what's going on, not only in under their jurisdictions, but in their member or partner agency jurisdictions. So again, if you're comfortable with this process, we'll kick it off and come back to you in October. So today we're looking for a motion to endorse the process.
Thank you, Dave. Mr. Aslan, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, one or the other, I guess. So I don't want to get I don't want to betray my lack of statistical chops here, but just a cursory glance at this matrix. There's only 11 twos and 2 ones. So, and lots of fives, lots of fours, lots of threes. So we sort of have a curve that's tapering off towards the lower priority. It seems like everything is a high priority here. Just wondering if you can speak to that a little bit. If the process was meant to maybe suss out a smaller number of priorities and everything else, should exist more central to the bell curve. I don't know. I'm just, and I might be misinterpreting the matrix too. There's a lot of different columns here and it might not all add up to something that you can graph as a distribution. So just thoughts.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Aslan, thank you for the question. And far right column are the higher priority projects. And again, there were about 80.
Does this chart keep going down?
It doesn't. I only showed the top 25.
Okay.
Well,
that explains
our ability. Yeah,
my
our ability
discrepancy
to address
there.
all 80 projects is limited. And so what this helps us do is say, well, where of these 80 projects, where does MetroPlan involvement come to play? And when we come back to you in October, we'll sort this not only by the total, but by looking at MetroPlan involvement, where we think MetroPlan can best be involved. And our involvement, as you've, I think, seen in the past, can range from taking the lead in the planning effort to writing a letter of support. So there's a lot of different things that we can do depending on what the project needs. And this process really helps us identify not just the priorities, but also the role that we should play.
Well, I have.
Please.
Public town Flagstaff. That is the sort of event which could, really put the thumb on the scale of something like this. And I would think that we would need to incorporate any long-term reactions to that tragedy into our configuration here. I could see answers changing from before Friday and afterwards.
Well, I'll make a quick comment to that. That, of course, was the bicycle accident at Beaver. But I also note, I mentioned this at the city council meeting just last night, that pedestrian and bicycle pedestrian projects are right at the top of this list. So, Mr. Wetzel, do you have further comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think under that category of urgency, part of what we look at is, are there urgent safety issues? And so we can certainly take a look at that before we send this back out and make sure that that is clear. So thank you for the comments.
Right, and I guess it's not really clear, like when it says pedestrian bike projects, what that really means. Is that kind of to be determined, or?
Mr. Chair, to respond, what we looked at, I think we came down to pedestrian bike projects was to pursue funding, and that there was an active transportation master plan in the works, and I believe it's finding its way into the public review process and hopefully adoption process. So as we bring these forward, we'll define those projects with a brief paragraph in terms of their scope, and then define our role for you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I could also respond to the that's being discussed. Really appreciate the questions. And the reality of this very tragic and difficult situation that happened over the weekend. And one of the reasons, this is only the second year that we've used a matrix like this. And the reason we put it together last year is because, as Dave said, there's 80 projects or more. So how do we prioritize where we should be focusing our limited energy? And by putting things through this matrix at finer and finer levels to say, where does it really make the most sense for us to invest our time and money, we come up with things that there seems to be pretty good consensus, rise to the top. And this is for 2020. So we are going to, and it's in our strategic work plan, to update this, refine it a bit. We got some feedback from the technical advisory committee about how they'd like to see us improve the process. And Dave's all over that. So what we will do is bring this back to you with, as we run through all the projects again, we'll bring back the title will change to Metro Plan Regional Project Assessment 2021. And we hope to have that September, certainly by October.
So Jeff, I'm a little unclear about what you're asking for. Are you asking us to approve this? And this was the matrix for last year. So why do we need to approve last year's matrix?
You don't need to approve last year's matrix. Dave and I discussed this, Mr. Chair and members of the board, is kind of being, we have a very new group of board members, as kind of an educational opportunity to share how we approach these problems and how we structure our work. So we just kind of wanted to run you through that system or that thought process. We don't need action. It's for information only. Of course, if the board has direction, certainly we'd love to hear it.
So this is more a discussion about the process more than the details in this case. And then in a few months, we may use this to set priorities for next year.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
All right. Thank you. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but it occurs to me it might be good to show all 80 projects.
I was just going to ask if I missed it somewhere where all 80 projects are listed. I bet when you go over to the total column, it probably does have a pretty binomial shape to it, with just a couple things up in the 40s, most things in the 30s and 20s, and about an equal number of things in the teens and zeros as we're in the 40s. That's my guess.
Mr. Chair, Member Aslan, I'll be happy to send out the full list shortly after the meeting.
Cool.
All right. So no formal action required.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
I may, I believe I heard Mr. Wessel mention at the beginning of his presentation is to present this matrix for the new board members to be familiar with the matrix, but also reaffirm, these priorities. But I think this also gives us an opportunity to update the matrix. For example, if you're looking at the matrix, the second to the last line, it states fourth to the last line, or fifth to the last, the transportation planner. Is that the transportation planner that we just approved on the budget? Or is it different because it specifies Mountain Line as the lead agency? And then there are some projects that are based on funding, like the Lone Tree Overpass, based on the collection of taxpayers' fund due to 419. And then there are some projects that I think it's so very important to note that the pedestrian bike ped projects, it's on the top. But if there's some specific other related projects, everything about ped and bike safety should also be incorporated in this line item. I'm not sure if I'm expressing myself well. As we go through the list and probably all the way to the 80 list, if there are some projects that we can combine in terms of priorities, and I know most of these projects are integrated and interrelated and depending on funding matches from the state and the federal agencies.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
Councilmember Salas. Yeah, so I appreciate, scrolling back up and to the agenda item. And I believe it's misrepresented there. We're really looking for an endorsement of the process, as Jeff mentioned. We're not looking for a reaffirmation of the matrix itself, but what the matrix represents in terms of a process that we're going through. And so we will be updating the matrix in terms of the list of projects. And one of the things that has happened in the past is multiple partners have identified the same project. And so we try to normalize those and combine them. And so there may be opportunities, as Councilmember Salas suggests, to look for opportunities to gain efficiencies, if you will, by combining efforts. So really looking for an endorsement of the process. If you're comfortable with this, we'll get that started and come back in October. And again, in the meantime, I'll send out the current list of 80 or so projects to you all, and with a status report. That's one of the first things we'll do. So I can go ahead and do that status report on the existing projects before I send that out.
All right, it sounds like we don't need formal approval, but we have made some comments that I'm sure you'll take into account when you're working on this. Ms. Horstman?
Yeah, and first of all, I want to thank you for it. As a new board member, it was helpful for me, and I look forward to actually seeing all 80 projects as City Councilman Asselin talked about, because I think it would be helpful for me to see what you were prioritizing, the whole list. Second of all, according to what you've got on the agenda, you want us to review and reaffirm the project prioritization matrix. And I think it is important that we have some type of logical way to go through these and prioritize the projects. Now, as presented, it sounds totally logical to me and sounds like it makes a lot of sense. If you're looking for formal action, I'll be happy to make a motion that noting that we have reviewed and reaffirmed the matrix and the process to develop that matrix for prioritization.
Well, I'll take that as a motion. It certainly wouldn't hurt to formally approve it. I'll second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor of Ms. Horstman's motion, please say aye.
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 And I'm an aye. Any nays?
Aye.
Austin, you're an aye, I take it. So that passes without dissent. Thank you. Well, let's
Thank
move
you,
on.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David. Let's move on to item 3F, which is contract approval. And I think I'll read this just to clarify. So staff is recommending that the board take two actions. First, approve a final draft contract with the Burgess and Nyepel for $362,792 as the recommended selection under the RFP process. And second, authorize the executive director to sign the contract pending completion of contract negotiations with potential revisions of non-substantive terms as approved by the legal counsel. So Mr. Malbec, I believe you're going to take the lead on this one.
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. And if I could just jump back and tell you, I really appreciate the discussion we just had on the project matrix and the questions and the engagement. That's how we know as staff, to bring back and give you the information that you want. So it's going to be a better process for it. So thank you. And jumping to this project, I ran this recommendation past our very capable attorney, Brandon Kavanaugh, and he got very specific. So I appreciate you reading it that way, Chair McCarthy. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit and just take you through the staff report, because I know we have we still have some really big items ahead of us. This regional transportation plan, we do it every 25 years. And I think I've reported on this at each of the meetings in the past 5 months. And we completed a national search for a firm to come in. If there's ever a place to use consultants, a 25-year transportation plan is it, because the breadth and depth of expertise that's required, are needing to look really at models all over the country and best practices is so high that we need a consulting firm. And as you will recall, we created a regional transportation plan advisory group 6 months ago. And the names of the individuals on that group are in the center of the screen in front of you. And we set up a review committee. So the review committee consisted of technical staff from the county and the city and ADOT and Mountain Line and MetroPlan. And this group of technical staff, they took the proposals in. We received 3 qualified proposals, and the review committee of technical staff said, you know what, let's interview all of them. So we did. And we scored those interviews. And the scores came out, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, with Burgess and Nyepel at the top. So we then took this information to the Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Group. And I know there's just so many groups here, it can be confusing. The point is, we really want to be thorough and inclusive and make sure we're getting people's buy-in all along the way. So this review committee of technical staff, they actually attended the advisory group meeting with all these public individuals. And they said why we recommended and why we scored Burgess and Nyepel so highly. And really, it was consensus of all the various members of the review committee to support this Burgess and Nyepel contract. And the advisory group asked a bunch of questions, and then they endorsed it as well. So they came to consensus to support this Burgess and Nyepel contract. Finally, we brought it to the technical advisory committee, who also supported it. So the way our process is set up, I entered into negotiations with Burgess and Nyepel, and I developed a contract. And legal counsel reviewed it a couple of times. The final draft is attached, and you received it in the packet. And I'm asking for board approval as per the recommendation that Chair McCarthy read. The fiscal impact it's a $362,000 contract, and we've allocated funding for it. It's going to be in fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22 budgets. So just to be clear and lay out the alternatives, the first is what Chair McCarthy read, and that I'm recommending you approve today. You could defer a decision until the contract's 100% complete. And I got to tell you, it's 99.99% complete. There's almost nothing else to clean up on it. And you could say, you don't want to approve the contract. And then we would go back out and we would go through probably a 6-month process to try to find another firm. We could certainly do that. It would definitely put us behind schedule on getting the work done. And the contract is attached. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you.
Well, thank you. Do any board members have any questions about the contract? Or
Yes,
Mr. Coley, please.
yes. Is Burgess and Nyepel the office in Phoenix?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the local Arizona. Yeah, I don't see any reason to go back out if the process is sound, and it appears to be so to me. with the list of the people that are in the committee that looked at this and scored it, and it came out, it's what it is. So I can't imagine any reason to consider a different fund.
Thank you, Dr. Acoli. Any other comments? Yeah, I would say that the committee is a pretty impressive list of our friends. If there's no comments, would anybody be willing to make a motion to approve item 3F in accordance with what I read as we started out?
I so move.
Thank you, Dr. Acoli. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And Mr. Vasquez seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye, and I'm an aye.
Mr. Chair, I just wanna be clear that the motion was to approve a final draft contract with Burgess and Nyepel for $362,793 as recommended by the selection and RFP process, and authorize the executive director to sign the contract pending completion of contract negotiations with potential revision of non-substantive terms as approved by Metroplan Legal Counsel.
That is exactly correct. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Do we have any nays? So that contract is approved without dissent. All right, the next item, which is 3G, is Intelligent Transportation Systems. And the recommendation is that the board support pursuing a federal technology deployment grant for advanced traffic management systems based on the ITS strategy interim findings. So Mr. Wessel is going to take the lead on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share my screen. And can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation?
I can see it.
Excellent. So again, Mr. Chair, members of the board, we're really looking for you to direct staff to pursue this technology grant. We made an effort last year and decided to defer that and work on a regional strategy for intelligent transportation systems, ITS deployment, on which to base the grant. So we've been working diligently in that regard and feel that the strategy is at a point combined with other factors to justify shifting gears to pursue the grant and get your blessing for that. So again, what we're looking for is today findings that the strategy is sufficiently complete, concur that Proposition 419 funds directed to smart signals justifies that as the grant focus, and really endorsing a pursuit of the grant and looking at starting with 2 options and then really focusing on one by the 25th of this month. So here's a quick strategy text status. Things are coming along very well for most of the data gathering and analysis. We have much of that information in hand and just need to kind of put it in a more uniform format and develop the analyses. Want to give kudos to our outgoing Montoya Fellow for her work on putting together the cover here for the study and developing the icons that you see. The report is coming along. We have a table of contents, and really the heart of that is the mission, vision, and goals. And we have been engaged with more than 30 individuals from all our member agencies in the production of these. We have a mission statement and a vision statement that you see here regarding the use of technology to improve basically the lives of our constituents and to really achieve national recognition for how we work together in this deployment. We have many goals. Again, we went through a fairly rigorous process working with our stakeholders to develop these. data is really at the heart of an intelligent transportation system to make informed decisions that'll help us improve efficiency, gain sustainability and equity, and achieve safety and security. And each of these goals has many subpoints to it that will help with developing our performance metrics as we move forward. Not really intending for you to read through all of these, just knowing that we've been through a rigorous process to develop the goals. We have also gone through a similar process to identify a governance structure, not only for the strategy, but this will be important in the development of the grant to indicate to the funding agency that we can work collaboratively, that we've already started to work on this. And so whether it's an IGA between the city and Mountain Line or a joint project agreement involving ADOT, we have a very broad structure identifying numerous topics which an IGA should address. As far as existing conditions and future needs, we're looking at population trends and intersection crashes, transit ridership, visitation, which we've just recently developed, we don't have in here, and miles of congested roadway. And you can see where I have that circled, where it's been steadily getting worse, but it's projected to get a lot worse. And so really the need for an ITS system to make the most of what we have is critical. And that's the point we'll be moving forward with. We've put together identified priority corridors. We ran this by the TAC and they're supportive of the process, where we looked at delay and crashes and transit and the need for fiber using the city's fiber optics plan to identify which of our corridors meet most of these criteria and have the most need for an ITS deployment. You can see Butler arises to the top. We know that we already have some equipment in place in Butler. And so we'll be looking at how to leverage that and build off of that, either in concert with ADOT or perhaps as a lone city project, perhaps moving to the east. So here's the fiber optics plan. As I just mentioned, we'll look to a couple of options early on and try to evaluate those before the end of the month and make a selection to pursue for the final grant. And common to both of these is really a key connection between City Hall and NAU to really strengthen the core of that fiber network. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we want to focus on smart signals, and really what are the primary motive is our grant money or match money really comes through Proposition 419. Again, as we look at the strategy, we're in pretty good shape to move forward on a grant based on the strategy, where we have the description and high-level system requirements completed. Existing conditions are fairly well defined. We just need to bring those together in a more formal nature. Likewise with the analysis and recommendations. We have a lot of solid data and information on signal timing and other things where we can really make a good case for this type of project. And just as a quick note, relative to the strategy itself, many of the other 9 technical groups, from advanced public transportation systems to mobility planning, are in the same condition. This is just a slide to show that we have the methodology set up. Now that we have the data in hand, we'll be working through this analysis and looking at signal and crash delay, fatal and serious injuries, emissions, transit operations and maintenance across the board. So we're looking at a couple different alternatives, again, to reach a decision by June 25th on the final project to submit for the grant. And if we look at a partner grant, they tend to be more competitive. A lot of the funding agencies identify partnering as one of the criteria. This is true of this grant. And so as we look at including parts of Milton 66, this also hits the high priority corridors. So that's helpful and would work with ADOT as a partner, possibly also with Mountain Line. Route 14 is one of the only route that is having on-time problems right now. And so there may be an opportunity to develop that. A real disadvantage, though, is that it's very complex. You have not just the technical issues, but the administrative, bureaucratic issues to resolve. The city is bringing, the lion's share of the match to this project, and the city wants to see a good return. And so trying to find a good balance of a partnership project where we're not over investing or unfairly investing in an ADOT system versus the city system, given the city money. So that's one thing we'll be looking at. And then the implementation itself when it comes to building and looking at jurisdictional issues with permitting and coordinating. So, excuse me. If we were to do a city focus, it's kind of the other side of the coin. It's a much simpler application. Implementation will be simpler. And if we looked at a project on Bueller 89, we can still look to future partnerships as being, trying to hit that mark on a grant application. But that could be difficult. And it also would defer valuable collaboration on the ITS, in the ITS arena. I mean, there's conversations that go on all the time between the various partners, but this really represents an opportunity for striking out in a more intentional vein. So what we hope to do through now in June, what we intend to do is finish our analysis, provide cost estimation, and really define those projects and then select one. So we'll be looking to work with our partners to bring them in on vetting those and making sure we arrive at the most advantageous decision. So again, a reflection to reflect back on our objectives. Is the ITS strategy in good shape to move towards grant application? We think it is. Is 419 a good enough reason to go after smart signals? I would say yes, it is, including the priority for fiber and other things that are so important. And then looking for your endorsement today on pursuing these grant alternatives and selecting one. So here's a motion a couple motion alternatives that we might recommend, that staff recommends. The board to authorize staff to develop and evaluate 2 alternative smart signal projects and select the most promising to submit as a federal technology grant. Or if based on what you've heard today or other information that you may have available to you, would you direct us to pursue a city-focused smart signal project? So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Dave, if I'm understanding this correctly, what you're saying is that you want to have the option of including ADOT, that would be Milton, Highway 180, Route 66 in this grant proposal, but make the final decision on if ADOT should be included after you do some more of the analysis. Am I kind of reading between the right lines correctly there?
Mr. Chair, exactly. Again, because we think it's a more competitive grant, if ADOT is included, we'd like to see if we can't bring that to maturity, sufficient maturity, and make that the selection. If we can't reach that point, we think there's a fairly solid city-focused effort, and that's the direction we would go.
Do any of the other board members have questions or comments? Or Kevin Adams? Okay. Well, then I think you're looking for a motion to pursue the grants with the option to be decided later if it would be a city-only grant or if it would be comprehensive, including ADOT. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'll make that motion since I just said it. Got to get a second?
I'll second.
So that's Mr. Vasquez second, I believe. Yes. Any further questions or discussion?
I I have this point of clarification, Mr. Chair. Is that the option 1 in staff recommendation as presented by Mr. Wessel? If you could please.
Yes,
show
it
the
is
slide
option
again.
number 1.
Okay,
Alternative 1, as you know, on page 49 of the packet.
yeah. So the staff will develop a partner focus and a city focused. Identify a partner focus and a city focused projects.
Right.
Okay.
That is the motion.
I have another question, Mr. Chair. I don't
Go
know.
ahead.
I'm not quite familiar with the extent of details the staff can provide to us at this point in terms of the technical aspect of the grant. But I'm just thinking out loud in terms of the smart signals. Are these smart signals equipped with videos? For law enforcement to use when an accident occurs like Friday night?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Salas, video detection is standard. I would need to work with the city and ADOT in terms of kind of record retention. As you know, video, that's a lot of data and a lot of storage. But for something like an accident, that should be available immediately after the fact. So I believe the answer to your question is yes.
I might mention that I talked to Jeff Bauman from the traffic engineer from the city about this a couple days ago, and he said some cities have a system where it'll record like 2 hours of video. And so if the police go over within 2 hours of an accident, then they can save the data. But if you wait like 2 or 3 days, the data will be gone. It's kind of a compromise between the cost of storing the data and the need for the data. Any other questions or comments? I'll have one comment, but let's do the vote first. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And I'm an aye. Do we have any nays? I don't hear any nays, so that motion passes. Just a real quick comment. I wonder if there's any possibility for signal prioritization for maybe buses or police or ambulances or firemen. When I was raised in Tucson, they had a system where the fire engines would have a strobe light and that would signal the light to turn green. So to get the emergency vehicles through the intersection. So something you might want to think about. I'm not saying you need to or not, but just at least think about it.
Certainly will. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so let's move on to item H. We're almost at the end here, on time, I might add. This is some, well, first of all, what H is historic funding levels versus anticipated funding levels. I asked Mr. Mailbeck, one of the purposes of forming Metro Plan was that we thought we could get more money. And if we would, be efficient. So that's kind of what this is all about. So Mr. Mailbeck, please go ahead.
Mr.
Chairman?
Chair, members of the
Excuse me.
board.
Mr.
Chairman McCarthy,
Yes,
I joined at the meeting. Yeah, I joined at the meeting. I was in another meeting, so I got done and I let you know that I'm on call right now. So thank you very much. I'm sorry, Jeff.
that's Mr. Thompson is on the call now. And we did note that you were going to be late, but you would be here. So thank you for letting us know. All right, Jeff Mailbeck.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Thompson. And as Chair McCarthy said, he asked me to put this information together, and I appreciate the opportunity. I want to point out our strategic work plan item of setting a goal of securing $2 million in additional resources, including technology, and that's the grant actually that Dave just spoke about. And we have only been Metro Plan for less than a year officially as an independent nonprofit. And I know we have a lot of new board members, but we were the FMPO at the city for 22 years. And there were a lot of reasons for reforming the FMPO as a nonprofit and reinventing its identity and expanding its structure. And certainly to make the FMPO more inclusive and to increase our collective clout. And then we wanted to be more equitable with agency involvement and representation. And a lot of that stuff has been done. Since 2019, NAU has been added to the management committee, and NAPTA or Mountain Line to the executive board. And in fact, with Dr. Okoli joining us, we get both NAU and Mountain Line on the executive board, which is a nice serendipity, I would say. We also branded as Metro Plan, as you know, and we're a nonprofit, and we have been pursuing additional and new funding sources, which I'm going to report on. And I want to take you back a bit and look to the efforts of the Metro Plan Board in 2017. Chair McCarthy was on the Metro Plan Board at that time, but I don't believe any of the other current members were. And in 2017, funding was one of the main drivers for reinventing as Metro Plan. And the idea was that we could, coordinate efforts between agencies to get funding, that we could work to remove barriers that might exist within agencies to pursuing federal funding. Sorry, there's an alarm going out behind me at Heritage Square, so I hope it's not interrupting what you can hear. In any case, and then we wanted to initiate our own funding pursuits. And really, for those of you who are familiar, the idea was to follow the NAPTA model. NAPTA began pursuing federal funding in about 2002. And it took us about 5 years to get the first really significant grants. But over subsequent years, really, 80% of all of our capital projects were paid for with federal grants. And that pattern it's still going on with current leadership. And momentum is increasing. So in the 12 or so years I was there, 2006 to 2018, we secured about 50 million in federal funding. And then since 2019, and I'm still confirming this number with the NAPTA CEO and Mountain Line, I believe they've received approximately 25 million more in just the past 3 years. So, that model of success, that momentum is what we're trying to replicate with all the modes of transportation, not just transit. We want to do it with all the modes and for the benefit of all of the agencies. I do want to point out that we are different than Mountain Line. We're both independent and regional. We have a board of elected officials, but there's some differences because they're focused on Metro Plan and we're all modes. They can apply for funding directly. We have very limited places that we can apply for direct funding, so it usually goes through other agencies. And then, of course, they operate their own service and they build buildings, and we at Metro Plan really just, at this point, plan. So our leadership role is more facilitative. It's based on synergy, which is a word that I believe Councilmember Salas brought to the strategic advance a couple of years ago, and a lot of collaboration. And one example I have of that is we facilitated a connection between Mountain Line and the city pursuing a $5.5 million grant. And that was awarded to Mountain Line. And it's being used by the city of Flagstaff in 2021. And we're going to continue to pursue all funding opportunities and the partnerships that make sense. I want to be really careful and really, really clear here. The $5.5 million grant, we ultimately received it because the NAPTA CEO said, yes, I'm going to go ahead and apply for this on behalf of the city. And the city of Flagstaff said, yes. So Heather Dumlin and Greg Clifton said, yes, we want to put up our local match and partner with NAPTA and pursue this grant. And it's that kind of collaboration which just makes a huge difference. So I'm going to go to a quick PowerPoint and show you how things have, I will say, evolved over the past few years. So give me 1 minute to make this a full screen slideshow. And I think you can see the full screen of funding history. And there's a big table up there with lots of numbers where I basically at the top took fiscal year 2016, 17, 18, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And I put in our formula grants that all have their own fascinating acronym, which I'll go into if you like. But formula funding is basically, we're going to get this money anyway, pretty much. It's based on our population. And then competitive grants. And this is where we're really asking to bring in more money. And in 2016, you can see the $10 million we applied for under a build or raise grant, and then in subsequent years. And then how we started to approach different things in different years.
Jeff, I'm just seeing the first slide. I think you wanted to forward to the second or third slide.
Actually, not just yet. Thank you for that.
Okay, all right.
Just a second. But I wanted to give you the details so you knew where these numbers came from. And to boil it down and make the story clearer, I just summarized some of these numbers and put them into a graph. And here's the graph that Chair McCarthy was referring to. So in 2016, we received, the orange line, which is the total we received, and the blue line is the total amount we pursued. So we don't get every grant we pursue. And I know you're all aware at how that works. But you don't get anything if you don't pursue it. So in 2016, we pursued 3 grants, about 10 million, and we got our formula money essentially, I think. And then in 2017, we pursued 2 grants, and you can see, 12 million, we got 1.1. And then in 2018, 3 grants, that's the big number on top. And then 2019, still 3 grants. 2020, we did a little bit more. We did 4 grants.
Jeff, I think if you would go to page 3, I think that would help the discussion. You're still on page 1.
Are you not able to see the PowerPoint presentation?
We see it, but we're on page 1. Click on page 3. There we go. There we go.
So I've got the slide up. 1 second. Let me try to get the right. I guess I shared the wrong screen.
There we go.
Okay, so now you can see the big graph.
Perfect.
All right, I apologize for that. I was misreading my 3 screen shares. Let me just go back because I was telling you about this table, okay? So you've got all this data of grants that we have applied for in the different categories over the past 6 years. And it's a summary table, but it's still a lot of data and hard to make sense of. So going to the graph, which I believe you can all see now, I've summarized it. So the big number at the top of the bars is how many grants we pursued. And then the blue bar is the total amount we pursued. And the orange bar is how much we received. And you can see 3 grants in 2016, and then through 2017 and 18 and 19, the amount we received. In 2020, we pursued 1 more grant. And really it was just this past year, we pursued 7 grants, 33 million. And the number that was received to the region is 6.5 million. And largely because we received that, and I say we in the biggest term, this takes everybody, but we received the $5.5 million bicycle and pedestrian grant. And I do just want to take an opportunity to connect back to the project matrix that Dave shared a bit earlier. And the second priority was bicycle and pedestrian funding. And the board about a year ago said, one of your priorities, Metro Plan, is to go get more bicycle and pedestrian funding. So we focused on it, and we again, largely the community, Heather Dalmelin and Greg Clifton and everybody involved, but we worked together and we got that big chunk of money. And the idea is just to, continue that. year over year, grant after grant, and just continue to bring more money into the region. So I think, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, and thank you for your patience in working through the technical things, and I turn it back to you.
Well, thank you. I've had my share of technical issues too. So do we have any questions or comments from the board? I'm not seeing any.
Well, I'll just make a comment. So it appears that the idea behind the Metro Plan and creating Metro Plan is in fact working. So I just want to point that out. That's what's kind of the intent and purpose. And we can see through the numbers that the gain that has been made. So thank you, Jeff, and Metro Plan staff. I think this is excellent. And I appreciate again, being the new kid on the block, appreciate the historic perspective of it. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll also note that even if we subtracted out the pedestrian and bicycle grant that we got, the trend is still up, even if we took that one off. So that's good. Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to, commend Jeff and the Metro Plan. Applying for grant is not an easy thing, and having a success and receiving grants year after year. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is tremendous.
Thank you, Dr. Coley.
I'd just like to congratulate the team for great efforts. As Supervisor Horstman mentioned, the numbers show that the collaboration is just improving, and hopefully that trend continues to go up higher and we get more regional projects that are beneficial to our community. So good job, team, and look forward to the future collaborations.
Yeah, I like the work. I like your use of the word team, because that really sums it up. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, could I say one more thing?
Okay.
Really appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the word collaboration and team. And just to be really clear, Metro Plan is a different kind of an organization. These grants came in because the member agencies are saying, let's pursue them. Let's work together. Let's see how what you can do can match what I can do. So Metro Plan, in a lot of ways, I just want to be, coy, I guess, and just step back a bit and praise the member agencies who are doing this work and working together. And to the extent Metro Plan can support that and be facilitative and provide a vision and keep moving, well, great. And yeah, just want to be sure I'm not taking too much credit for the work the other agencies are doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm sure that's appreciated. Well, if there's no more comments, we don't have any action item there. We can move on to 3I, and that's some input from the items from the executive director. So Jeff, that would be you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. One second here. I'm just going to go back up to, I think, page 4. And a few things. One, I want to recognize, I'm really glad we still have 15 minutes here because there's quite a bit to report. State funding initiative. As Councilmember Salas said, with Councilmember Salas's role on the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC, and with Supervisor Vasquez now stepping in as an alternate, which I really appreciate. RTAC has been pursuing essentially a $50 million funding effort for the whole state. And the idea is that all of the small MPOs and councils of government work together and with one voice go to the state legislature and say, we know you hear a lot from people in the city of Phoenix or in the Maricopa County area, but we're out here too, and we're speaking with one voice, and we would like to receive funding for these projects. And each area, like Metro Plan, each of the 10, we get to say what those projects are. So it's a really, I think, you know, dare I say, and Kevin Adam is in the room and I want to compliment him. I think he's still here. Brilliant to use the resources of RTAC in that way, because we get to go together, but we also get to advocate for our own projects. And the other thing is, just because we're all going together on these projects, it doesn't mean we can't go for individual projects. And for example, Councilmember Salas also wrote a letter asking for a $5 million special appropriation this past year just for us. So I do want to point out that Kevin Adam is here. And Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd just like to introduce him to the room and give him a chance to say a couple of words, if that's okay.
Please do that.
Kevin Adam. He stepped out. I keep saying nice things about him and he's not here for him. So, oh well, I'll send him a recording. So that's the state funding initiative. And I want to then go to item number 2, which is a work program agreement. And there's a hot link in your file. It goes to a contract. And essentially, Metro Plan needs to sign a contract with the state, Arizona Department of Transportation. And we make a lot of agreements that we're going to do things the way they tell us to, like how we adopt the budget and how we do Title VI work and many, many other things. So it's really very administrative in nature, and we sign it every 2 years. And I just signed it for us last month. And then the RAISE grant. And this has already come up today. And I believe Councilmember Salas asked a question about this, and Dave Wessel answered it. And I'd like to just give you the highlights on this one more time, because it's really important. RAISE is the new build grant, if you remember that pot of money. Under the new administration, it's called the RAISE grant. And there's $30 million nationwide of planning funding, okay? And we have so many projects downtown. I'm calling up the downtown mile, but the Rio to Flag, the downtown transit connection center, the Milton underpass, the widening potentially of the railroad, and other projects in that area. And Army Corps of Engineers, BNSF, the city, the state, the county, the transit authority, Metro Plan. I mean, we're all there with huge projects. So we, you know, collectively staff had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we're working together to pursue a $2.5, maybe $3 million grant to tie all these projects together with really one umbrella plan of how they're going to be phased, how they're going to link together. Very complicated. And so Metro Plan is doing a small part in just facilitating those meetings of staff and the consultant, and the city of Flagstaff is actually paying for the consultant to submit the grant, and it's going to be under the city's name. So it's really a collaborative effort, to come back to that word. I feel really good about it. We're meeting every week. Got a meeting today at 4 o'clock, and just getting all the information we need so we can put the grant in and hopefully bring in another $2.5 or $3 million for the region. And then I know I'm sharing a lot here, and there aren't really opportunities for people to engage. So I feel like, Mr. Chair, before I go on to the next one, I should take a breather and see if anyone wants to jump in.
Comments or questions?
Chairman,
Yes.
I'd just like to bring something up. And I know that, you know, every transportation organization, including the tribes, they want to see more projects, you know, going to rural, remote area communities so that they can increase the businesses in those areas. And of course, the top priority on the Native American reservation is getting the kids to school and back home safely, and to improve their academic performance without having to deal with the failing poor roads out there. So I know that the Rural Advocacy Group, they've been working on finding ways to get more monies for the transportation. And I don't know exactly where we're going to go next. We've most of the funds, ADOT funds, are going towards a modernization project, preservation, and expansion. And there's a lot of projects that don't make it into the annual budget. So I'm still wondering that, how else can we approach our legislature to allow us to do what the community wants us to do with more funding, if that could be made. So again, I feel that the fundings that are now coming in from the federal government is probably our best shot to go after immediately. So again, I do appreciate Jeff and all our staff, including the board members that are directly involved and doing what they can to get our projects noticed. So that's my comment, and thank you very much, Chairman, and members of the board.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Jeff, back to you.
Okay, thank you. So the last item here is the summer schedule. The calendar that the board adopted in January puts our next board meeting as September 1st. And as planners, staff are planning our work projects around these dates. As Rosie said, she put the Title VI plan to you a couple of months ago, recognizing the calendar. And I just want to point out, we can certainly call an additional meeting if the board wants to do that now. Or we can call a special meeting in July or August if the need arises. So that's, on the table. And I also want to point out that what I intend for our September meeting is to be live and in person. And I'm not sure how that'll play out or where it'll be, but we'll keep you posted on where it will be held. And we will maintain the Zoom functionality as well for those who want to use it. And if I could, I have one more thing, which is not on the agenda. And I just want to point out today is tomorrow is David Wessel's birthday. And he's been with us, I think, with this organization for 23, 24 years. He's such a great guy. And because I am a kind person, I'm not going to ask everyone to sing happy birthday to him. I don't think anyone likes having happy birthday sung to them. But I did want to
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we sing happy birthday.
I second that. And Mr. McCarthy can play the guitar.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I don't know if that's a serious motion or not.
Mr. Chair, the item's not on the agenda, so according
I think he's out of
I'm
order.
afraid we can't take action.
But we put a smile on Dave's face, and that was our real goal.
Well played. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday. Well,
Thank you.
on a similar vein, I think the next item is items to and from the board. Why don't I start with the vice?
Wait, hold on.
Horseman?
Jim, I think I kind of cut Jeff off in the mid-sentence. I'd like him to finish his thought.
Jeff, did you have some more?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We covered it. Thank you.
So if we're going to end on time, we only have about 5 minutes, but if anybody has anything, let me go down the list. Vice Chair Horstman, do you have anything for the board?
I have nothing additional for the board. Appreciate the update, Jeff, and onward.
And thank you for your participation. Geronimo Vasquez.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Great meeting. I learned a lot. Still absorbing everything. I did want to mention on the part about bike paths and whatnot in some of those projects that I've been hearing requests for bike path on 89 heading out to Donny Park, Fernwood area. So I'm new to this and not sure how to go about kind of planting seeds and getting things started, but there's definitely interest in District 2 for bike paths as well. So I'd like to definitely encourage and support any ways that we can increase bicycle safety for our community. And
Absolutely.
so thank you and
Maybe,
have a great summer.
Maybe you and Mr. Wetzel and Mr. Melbeck can talk about that.
Sure.
We could talk about it now, but we're almost out of time.
No
Also,
worries.
Mr. Aslan?
Yeah, I have nothing further to add. I just want to apologize for interrupting Jeff. And,
Thank you. Dr. Okoli?
Nothing additional to add, and thank you for having me. This is my first.
Well, I can assure you it's our pleasure. Ms. Salas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to welcome Dr. Okoli officially to our board. And I also want to inform the board that I will not be able to make the in-person meeting on September 1st because I will be attending the Arizona League of Cities and Town. Now I have to touch base with Vice Mayor Becky Daggett, who's the alternate, if she will be available to attend the MetroPlan or not, because she may be attending the league conference as well. And happy birthday to you.
Just
Very nice. Thank you.
I will be at that meeting in September as well.
okay. Mr. Thompson, did you have anything?
Just to once again appreciate the staff and all the board members. And I know from where I come from, we still have to deal with the mud created by rain and snow. And these are the kind of information I do continue to present to the board to have their eyes open up on it. And also I and the board members continue to fully support most of these projects that get on priority list. So I'm very proud of them. They're really understanding that these projects have been reviewed closely by the staff, and once they make it to the state board, they continue to approve these projects. So again, thank you very much, Jimmy, for letting me in on this meeting, even though I was late. Thank you very much.
Well, we're glad you could make it. I don't really have anything for the board right now. So I guess we'll let it go at that. God, we're gonna adjourn on time. Does anybody else have anything else before we formally adjourn? There is an item on there, but Mr. Melbeck really covered it already. September 1st is our next meeting. And so if there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting on time. So we are adjourned.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.